Less Than Zero by Bret Easton Ellis, a rather bleak and harrowing look at the lifestyles of the affluent young in early 1980s Los Angeles. So, this book was Bret Easton Ellis's debut novel, published, I believe, when he was only the tender age of 21 years old. And I think it would be safe to call this book perhaps one of the more noteworthy debuts in relatively recent literary history because it was a considerable hit, I believe, and essentially served to kind of catapult Ellis to the vanguard of the American literary scene. So, the story of Less Than Zero is not terribly hard to summarize because it basically has no story, at least in conventional plot terms, that is. It is narrated in the first person present tense, which was actually a very smart move, really, by a young man named Clay. I don't believe we're ever told what his last name is, but Clay is, I guess, like a freshman college student who is attending college in New Hampshire, but who has come back to his hometown of Los Angeles for winter break. And there he reconnects with his friends and re immerses himself in the decadent LA scene. And the book is basically just concerned with the exploits of he and his cohorts as they spend their time going to various parties, going to movies, and doing copious amounts of drugs. And that is pretty much the extent of the plot of Less Than Zero. So, Less Than Zero is a book which I think is better than it really has any right to be. Because if you break this book down into like its component attributes, its component parts, uh, it really does not have any claim to greatness if you analyze it just piece by piece. Rather, the quality of the book, the acclaim that the book has received is kind of more of an emergent property that can really only be explained when the thing is taken like as a whole. So the writing in the book is very, very simplistic. It is very direct. It's lacking pretty much totally in metaphor and simile. It consists of basically just short declarative sentences describing actions and describing things in kind of the most artless way possible. And in any other book, that would probably be a knock against it, but it's the weird case with Less Than Zero that the very like dirt simple writing actually serves to enhance the story. Again, it's kind of an emergent property, I would say. So the writing is very, very simple. Now, the characters have virtually no depth at all. In fact, most of these characters are just like names that are pretty much like interchangeable. They have virtually no depth. There's no development whatsoever with any of these characters over the course of this story. The characters are very, very flat and very, very shallow. And again, with any other book, that would be a major knock against it. But it is the weird, very singular case with Less Than Zero that actually, again, kind of enhances things. And of course, the story is basically just a loosely connected series of vignettes that constitute no real plot in the conventional sense of the word. It's just kind of a period in the life of this character, and it's also very, very repetitive in terms of its story. The events of its story, very, very repetitive. Just party, drugs, movie, drugs, promiscuous sex, drugs. It's just kind of the same handful of things over and over and over and over. And once again, in any other book, that would be a knock against it, but it is the very weird and very singular case with Less Than Zero that all of these seemingly poor qualities actually serve to lend to this book its impact. So, Less Than Zero is a book which takes a very, like, again, harrowing look at the lives of the affluent young in early 1980s Los Angeles. And this book is to some degree autobiographical because this is basically just like Bret Easton Ellis's life. He was, a rich kid in LA at that time, and he's writing from experience. Although I sincerely hope that he is not writing from experience when it comes to some of the more grotesque and depraved aspects of this book. But this book is to some degree autobiographical, and the tone of this book is really the standout uh, thing about it. Because this book is very nihilistic and it is very anhedonic. The characters in the book have virtually no morals or scruples to speak of at all. They are pretty much totally amoral. Their lives are hollow, meaningless husks. And as the book goes on, things gradually become more and more uh, grotesque and depraved. And he kind of ratchets it up there towards the end to the point where we're getting like graphic snuff films and extreme sexual abuse of very young children. And it's filtered through this just deadened, numb narration, which contains virtually no value judgments at all. It's just kind of relaying these increasingly horrifying events. And again, that is what contributes to the impact that this book has had, because it is so nihilistic, it is so anhedonic, that you're really kind of struck by just the hollowness, the emptiness, and the soullessness of it. Yeah, that's the word, the soullessness of it. And it is quite effective at that, I would say. Now, I do want to say that in comparison to Ellis's later work, I've only read American Psycho besides this of his. Although I do have The Shards over here on a shelf. I picked that up some time ago, but I haven't read that yet. But in comparison, at least with American Psycho, which is, I guess, Ellis's most famous or infamous work, Less Than Zero feels in some ways kind of like a trial run, because like this is definitely Ellis, like this is his style. Like this set the tone for what his books would be like in terms of like their writing and the characterization. That is very simplistic writing, very shallow, depthless characterization. But this book is also different from Ellis's later work, because Ellis is kind of what I guess you would call a transgressive satirist. And this book is definitely, definitely transgressive, but it is not satire. And that I noted as kind of a distinction between this and at least American Psycho, because American Psycho is like depraved to the nth degree. It is a genuinely disturbing book, or at least it was to me. Truly just an appalling, like horrifying book, but it's also just like laugh out loud hilarious at times. It really is kind of a very unique work that manages to fuse just like stomach churning depravity and horror with like satire and comedy, and it works. But this book doesn't have that. This book plays it pretty straight. There's little to no humor in this book. It's not going for a satirical tone. It's again playing it very straight, and I think it works. Like it leaves you kind of with like a hollow, dead feeling, kind of a bad taste in your mouth, and that's the point. The book is it's such a weird book because, again, if you analyze it like piece by piece, it should be like the biggest piece of crap, because the writing is just like high school level work. The characters have no depth at all, pretty much. The story is incredibly repetitive. Like, if you just break it down piece by piece, you would say there is no way this book should be called good at all, but it is. It is a very effective work, uh, whose quality, once again, is kind of an emergent property. But it emerges quite well, I think, over the course of its page count, and it really does have quite the effect, I think. So, to rate less than zero, I think I'm going to give the book a B plus. I don't think it's on par with Ellis's later work, or at least not with American Psycho, because American Psycho is just that book's a freaking masterpiece. It is not for everyone's taste. Hell, this book is not for everyone's taste. But if you do like Ellis's style, which I generally kind of do, if you're on his wavelength, American Psycho is literally a masterpiece. Like, it's funny, it is truly horrifying, also. But also, there are some really neat tricks in that book narratively. Like, the ending to that book is just absolutely brilliant. This book isn't quite on that level. It's not as slick. It's definitely something written, I guess, by a 21-year-old. It's kind of a younger person's book. It doesn't have the tricks or the razzle dazzle that his later books would have, but it is still effective and basically succeeds at what it sets out to do. So I'm going to give it a B plus. I think it is a remarkably strong debut, even though, again, it really doesn't have that much right to be if you like really analyze it. But taken as a whole, it is quite a remarkable book, actually. So getting a B plus for me. So Less Than Zero by Bret Easton Ellis. Have you read the book? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about the book, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said here today. And if you haven't read Less Than Zero, I would recommend this, especially if you've read American Psycho like I had, and you liked that book. Definitely pick this up, because this does feel kind of like a trial run for that. I guess American Psycho would probably be considered Ellis's masterpiece. It's certainly his most well-known book, if only because of like the film, the iconic film with Christian Bale. But this kind of does feel like a beta run for that, but it's still a pretty nifty little read in its own right. And I think it did kind of capture some form of um, grimy, uh, grimy and glamorous zeitgeist. So yeah, I could recommend it. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.